This is a PowerPoint presentation of the New South Wales DPI China Citrus Study Tour conducted by Falivene and Andrew Creek between the 8th and 22nd of December 2016. Coloured in orange is the citrus growing regions within China. We visited two main regions of the Jiangxi and the Chongqing province. We also visited markets down in the Guangdong region of Guangzhou. The blue box represents the same latitude of Australia's main southern growing regions as depicted in China. As you can see, it's very high up in China, and in fact in those regions citrus growing is generally not possible because it's just far too cold. In the regions that are growing citrus that you can see here, these would be the equivalent of latitude of the mid-northwest regions of New South Wales, such as Moree or Dubbo, growing citrus, and Queensland would be equivalent of latitude of these regions. Although compared to Australia it is much higher in latitude, it in fact gets quite cold in winter in China, thus they need to grow more in the southern regions, and they even get frosts, and that can be a considerable issue also in these regions. Also they have considerable industry of mandarin production, and this also favours a slightly warmer region, thus these regions are grown. This is typical of the kind of topography we went through the two regions that we visited, whereby the regions were quite mountainous or hilly, and since rice is still a very important crop to feed the population, it's grown on the valley floors where it's most suited, whilst up on the hillsides is where citrus production occurs. This is a view from the top of a hillside of citrus. Here you can see terracing occurring, where you can see a row of citrus up on the top of the hill here, whilst down below it is another row of citrus, and thus so on. Here is another good picture of the terracing that occurs in China. To try and prevent erosion of the terraces, grasses are grown along the hillsides of the terrace. The regions get a considerable amount of rainfall, and in most cases they do not require irrigation. However, irrigation is sometimes used on some properties to try and enhance production. This is the way that fruit is harvested by labourers, by placing fruit into baskets and carrying them down the hillsides on steps. These ones are made of brick and concrete. However, there are many steps that were just plain dirt steps. Many of these workers are local villagers, and the growers are getting quite concerned that no young people are coming back to the villages, and they will have a problem in the future as these workers will eventually retire and there won't be any people to replace the harvest labour. In relative terms, the cost of harvesting is still quite expensive in China. It's about half to two-thirds than that of Australia, and I can tell you from personal experience that these baskets are quite heavy, and I would find it hard going walking up and down these hillsides carrying about 40 kilos of fruit on my back. The fruit is then dumped into an area where then workers sort through the fruit and discard the fruit that is damaged, blemished or diseased. And here's an example of the type of fruit that is discarded. Firstly, for this pile over here you can see these type of green and small fruit. These are fruit that are from trees that are being affected by a devastating disease called huanglongbing, and this fruit is not desirable for fresh or juice market, because even for the juice market it has bad flavours. And here's another fruit with symptoms of citrus canker, another very bad disease that causes quite bad blemish on the external part of the fruit. Luckily, Australia does not have these diseases. After the fruit is sorted, it is loaded into these small trucks. The trucks have to be small because the roads are quite narrow and windy, and a large truck would definitely find it difficult to navigate through the mountains. Huanglongbing is a devastating disease, as I mentioned before, and here are some trees that have been pulled out that have been suffering this disease. This disease is a very bad disease that's not only affecting China, but other parts of the world like Brazil and also in the United States. It eventually kills the tree, and this hillside here was in fact a hillside of citrus but eventually it's all died out due to huanglongbing disease. The way the disease is managed is that as trees are detected with huanglongbing, they are immediately removed to try and stop the spread of huanglongbing. Then after they are removed, a little bit of lime is dug into the soil to help the decaying of the roots. And here are the symptoms of huanglongbing. Firstly, you can see a branch here that shows symptoms of nutrient deficiencies. It's a little bit yellow, lighter in colour, and it has multiple sorts of deficiencies on the branch. And this is often a giveaway sign of huanglongbing. Another giveaway sign is this green fruit. Generally the fruit that is affected, or the tree that is affected with huanglongbing, has fruit that generally does not colour well, and with the uncoloured fruit and this symptoms of the nutrient deficiencies, it's a giveaway of huanglongbing. The trees are tagged and then the tree is removed. To try and prevent the spread of huanglongbing, they are trying to prevent the spread of the vector, which is the Asian citrus psyllid. To do that, they are trying to net orchards to prevent the psyllid entering the orchards and bringing in huanglongbing to the trees. However, in this experiment, the netting wasn't strong enough and it tore when high winds came through the region. They are considering using thicker netting. However, this will increase the costs of the netting structure. A piggery so he can have his own natural fertilizer. They believe that using manure as fertilizer helps to make the fruit sweeter, and these large tanks to the right and the shed in the background is used to process the manure in both dry in the shed and liquid forms of fertilizer. They bury the fertilizer. They just don't throw the manure on top of the ground. They try and incorporate it, and here they're experimenting by digging a very large pit to bury the fertilizer to fertilize the trees, and the lady on the right here is hosing in the liquid manure under the trees. All the orchardists that we met said that they cultivated in the fertilizer into the ground, because if they just threw it on the ground, it would just burn off and dissipate into the air and be of no value. Of course, they could not get machinery up on those hillside terraces, so they just used a hand hoe to dig the manure under the trees. To try and help mechanization, this grower also grew citrus on rice paddies, and he used this machine to try and incorporate the manure into the soil.